I'm dying. On the hospital bed. My children surround me, crying and sobbing. My gaze falls on the silent man at the back of the crowd. James. James has aged. His once tall, proud posture now slightly stoops. His eyes are red as he says, "Vivian, spending decades as your husband has been the greatest blessing of my life. If there's an afterlife, I still want to spend it as your husband." I smile faintly. On the bedside table sits a bouquet of white roses, brought by someone I don't know. If there's an afterlife, I think to myself, I wouldn't do this again. As the ventilator emits a long, continuous beep, I slip into unconsciousness. In my final moments, a pair of aged, trembling hands clasp mine tightly. Warm tears fall onto my skin as James's voice trembles. "Vivian, I love you." I've waited 50 years to say these words. The quiet, reserved man finally speaks his heart at the end of my life. But none of it matters anymore. I no longer love him. The love that had once carried us from campus days to the wedding altar had long been worn away by the grind of daily life. James would come home exhausted from work. And one time I accidentally spilled a bottle of milk. His brows furrowed impatiently. "Vivian, why are you always so careless?" he snapped. I froze, embarrassed and at a loss. I took the laundry he tossed at me, catching a faint scent of iris perfume on his jacket. Furious, I demanded, "Whose perfume is this?" James just looked at me coldly. "Vivian, you've changed. You used to be kind and gentle. Now, you're no better than a nagging shrew." Was it me who had changed? Or had James? I decided to divorce him. Family members rushed to stop me. "Vivian, there's no conflict in marriage that lasts overnight. If you divorce him, what about Toby and Lily? Are you going to abandon your own children?" I silently wept, watching my mischievous kids as I cleaned up the messes they made. A relative sighed. "Besides, what man doesn't stray a little? Just focus on the kids and endure it. It'll pass." Endure it? I endured for 50 years. From a graceful young woman to a gray-haired old lady. From an energetic career woman to a bedridden patient. I endured. Finally, I am free. The buzzing of cicadas fills my ears. I open my eyes slowly, only to see the reflection of a beautiful young girl in the mirror. I'm stunned. My long-deceased mother calls from the kitchen. "Vivian, come set the table and wash your hands for dinner." It isn't until she touches my forehead, concerned, that I reluctantly accept the truth. I've returned to being 18 years old. Looking at my mother's caring eyes, I throw myself into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. My mother is bewildered. "What's wrong? Silly girl. Why are you crying?" In my past life, I gave birth to James's child while enduring a difficult labor. James's mother refused to allow a C-section, and my mother knelt on the hospital floor, begging the doctors to give me an epidural. Nearly 50 years old, my mother knelt and kowtowed, pleading with James's family and the doctors. I lay powerless on the hospital bed. When I began to hemorrhage, my mother rolled up her sleeves and offered her blood without hesitation. I survived, but my mother's health never recovered. She passed away in a hospital bed, her breathing fading before my helpless eyes. That wound in my heart has never healed. After crying my heart out, my father looks at me with a puzzled smile. "Vivian, what's wrong with you today? Excited for your first day at college?" I hug him tightly. My father looks even more confused. In my past life, he couldn't donate blood to save me, so he anxiously paced in the hospital, though he lived a long life. He spent his last years alone in the old family home, rocking on a creaky chair until he quietly passed away. Now, seeing my parents' loving, doting smiles, I feel an overwhelming warmth. At the dinner table, my mother casually asks, "Vivian, how are things going with James lately?" My hand freezes mid-air as I reach for food, pretending to be indifferent. I reply, "We broke up." Both my parents are shocked. "Why did you break up? Isn't James a great guy?" I set down my chopsticks and look at them calmly. "Mom, Dad, James cheated on me. The high-end iris perfume on his suit? That's from Sarah, his admirer." Sarah had chased after James since high school. Even after we got together in college, she never gave up. At our wedding, James had the audacity to introduce her to me. A stunning career woman, every bit as beautiful as me. exuding that signature iris scent. She smiled slyly and said, "Hi, I'm Sarah, James's high school admirer." Awkwardly, I extended my hand. "Hi, I'm Vivian." The iris scent was like an impenetrable wall, lingering on James's clothes and between us. He had long been infatuated with Sarah, unable to extricate himself. My recollections end there. I told my parents everything about Sarah. Both of them widened their eyes in shock. My father slammed his chopsticks on the table and said furiously, "Unbelievable. That boy seems so steady and reliable. But he pulled something like this." My mother hurried to calm him down. Perhaps their love had been so perfect that it made me once believe my relationship with James could be special too. After a long sigh, my father said, "When he was pursuing you, he swore to me he'd treasure you. He even knelt before me. I never expected this." I tried to calm him down. "Dad, don't get too angry. It's not worth it." After packing my things, I set off for college. Walking through the familiar streets, I couldn't help humming a tune, having this second chance at life. I was determined not to have any connection with James or his family, especially James. Stumbling my way toward the campus gates, I suddenly saw a tall and familiar figure in the distance. My heart sank instantly, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't James. It was just someone with the same tall, upright posture whose silhouette looked remarkably similar from afar. One of the welcoming upperclassmen noticed me and his eyes lit up. "Hey, freshman. I'm William." He eagerly offered to help me with my luggage. We made small talk along the way. Casually, he asked, "Which high school did you go to?" I answered, "Lincoln High, Class 2C. "Why?" He simply replied, "Oh," and said no more. But a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Then, scratching the back of his head shyly, he asked, "Do you remember me?" I vaguely recalled that there had been a senior with the last name Williams who had a crush on me back in high school. As we arrived at my dorm building, I took my luggage and looked at him calmly. "This is far enough, William. Thank you." He lowered his head in disappointment but quickly mustered the courage to ask, "Vivian, can I treat you to dinner?" I felt a headache coming on, unsure how to politely decline this energetic and persistent young man. But as I looked up, I suddenly noticed someone across the way. My breath caught. Standing at the entrance of the women's dorm, panting slightly, was James. My heart dropped, and I blurted out, "James, what are you doing here?" This point in time, James should have been busy with some academic discussion. As for the person he was discussing things with, only the faint scent of perfume could answer that. James's voice was dry as he looked at me, his gaze flickering. "Vivian, it's me." So James had also been reborn. Without saying a word, he pulled me into an embrace, holding me tightly as if clutching some long-lost treasure. "Vivian, we finally have another chance. This time, I'll treat you right. We'll have a son and a daughter. I'll do the laundry, work hard, and buy us a big house." The memory of spilled milk resurfaced vividly in my mind, spreading like a sticky mess down my spine. I couldn't suppress a shiver as I pushed him away firmly. "James, we're done. Let's break up." James stared at me in disbelief, then chuckled indulgently. "Vivian, don't be ridiculous." But as he held me, I saw Sarah standing not far away. Her face was filled with bitterness, and she swayed slightly, as though struggling to stand. The faint scent of iris on James's collar hit me once more. Even with a second chance, James had still repeated the same mistakes. Noticing my gaze on Sarah, James's expression grew panicked. "We were just discussing academics," he explained quickly. "Discussing academics again? You're just a regular college student. Do you really think there's so much academic work for you to discuss every day?" I snapped, "James, who do you think you are?" It was the first time I'd ever spoken to him so directly. James seemed stunned, as though he couldn't believe I would say something so blunt. People bustled around us, and he seemed increasingly uncomfortable. Lowering his voice, he said, "Vivian, let's talk somewhere else. Okay, don't you want to see Toby and Lily again?" Toby and Lily, my twins, born after a grueling labor. After their birth, my maternal instincts overwhelmed me, and I couldn't bear to leave their side. James cleverly used this opportunity to distance himself from parental responsibilities. I remembered how he once spilled our daughter's formula on purpose, then complained, "I'm a man. How am I supposed to handle this stuff? Vivian, you take care of it." I asked James to change our son's diaper once, and he pretended to get a phone call. His acting was painfully amateur. "Hello? Mr. Wong. I'll head to the office right away. My wife is insisting I look after the baby. You know how women are," he said before disappearing for the night. When he returned, his body reeked of unfamiliar perfume. Whenever this happened, he would bring me a bouquet of flowers or make some kind of gesture, as if trying to make up for his wrongdoings. His insincere attempts were accompanied by the voices of his relatives echoing in my head, urging me to be more forgiving, to focus on the children, to silently wash his underwear while he indulged himself outside. After a night of revelry, James would return, his mood restored, leaving me to quietly endure it all. But not this time. I shook off his hand with force. He looked at me, startled, and quickly said, "But our kids were so adorable. Don't you want to go back to those happy family moments?" "Happy family moments?" I shot back. "You mean your family's happiness? The James family's happiness? What does that have to do with me? I've always been an outsider. At New Year gatherings, I was always the one stuck in the kitchen. Even during the bitter cold of winter, I would work myself into a sweat, only to be criticized for being too slow. This is your family, James," I said coldly. "It's never been my home. My real home fell apart the day my mother passed away. My parents died, leaving me, their only daughter, struggling to survive in a family that wasn't mine." Under the midday sun, James and I stood face to face, surrounded by onlookers. Their curious, judgmental gazes bore into us. Flustered, James fumbled through his bag, trying to pull something out, but I didn't give him a chance. "I, Vivian White, swear to never have any ties with James Carter again. If I go back on this vow, may I be struck by lightning." My words cut through the air like a blade. James's face twisted in disbelief as he reached out to grab my arm. But William stepped in, his tall frame effortlessly shielding me. "James," William said with a mocking smile, "this is none of your business anymore. Vivian has made herself clear. She doesn't want anything to do with you." Still, James refused to back down. "This is between me and my girlfriend," he insisted stubbornly. William let out a laugh, sharp and unapologetic. "Girlfriend? James, are you deaf? Or just pretending? Vivian already said she wants nothing to do with you. To put it plainly, you're already broken up. If your hearing's that bad, head out the gate, turn left, and find the ear cleaning shop. $5 a session." The crowd burst into laughter, because everyone knew there wasn't an ear cleaning shop in that direction, just a public restroom. James's face turned crimson, resembling an enraged bull. That moment, Sarah appeared, walking toward us with a feigned look of innocence. She clung to James's arm, her tone dripping with faux concern. "Vivian, don't make things difficult for James. He's your ex-boyfriend. After all." I didn't hesitate to respond, my tone biting. "Sarah, what's your problem? Do you like him that much?" Her expression froze for a second before recovering, but James quickly removed her hand from his arm, looking flustered as he prepared to explain. Sarah, however, spoke up first, her voice lazy and nonchalant. "And what if I do? You've already broken up. Don't I have the right to pursue my true love?" The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. "Well, they are broken up," someone said. "If Sarah likes him, isn't it fair for her to go after him?" I wanted to laugh. Such noble words. In my last life, Sarah hadn't just pursued James. She'd been the other woman in our marriage. Sarah's gaze was resolute as she began recounting her long history of unrequited love. Her words were crafted to tug at heartstrings, making her sound like a tragic heroine. When she finished, she gave me a triumphant glance before wrapping her arms tightly around James. And James, who only moments ago was desperately trying to win me back, now looked utterly bewitched by the softness pressed against him. I clenched my teeth in frustration, unable to reveal my secret of being reborn. The anger simmered in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Just then, William, as nonchalant as ever, raised his phone. his sharp gaze fixed on them. What are you talking about? Homewrecker. All eyes turned toward William, who had his phone raised. On the screen was a photo of James and Sarah in an intimate embrace. The timestamp clearly showing it was taken just half an hour earlier. Sarah's face instantly paled. William, you're shameless. How dare you invade someone's privacy and take pictures like this? Feigning surprise, William smirked. So, you're admitting the photo is real. Then, he waved his hand nonchalantly and stuck out his tongue playfully. Relax. I didn't take this picture. I had a friend from the design department whip it up in a few minutes. I never expected you to get so flustered. But since you've already blown your own cover, should we take your pursuit of James as you willingly debasing yourself to be a homewrecker? That moment, James rushed over, his collar once again carrying the unmistakable scent of iris perfume. Everything was now clear. The photo might have been fake, but their affair was undeniable. James, proud as ever, couldn't handle the judgmental stares from the crowd. Furious, he shoved Sarah's arm away and fled the scene in embarrassment. Sarah's cheerful, confident exterior shattered as she glared at me with resentment. I met her gaze calmly and said, "He's not a man worth trusting. You'll regret this." For a moment, Sarah was stunned. Then, curling her lips into a mocking smile, she replied, "Vivian, I've known him far longer than you have. I understand him. I'll make sure I marry him." I sighed. Cross 2 lifetimes. Sarah's arrogance remained unchanged. I had already warned her. What happened next was her own choice. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving me alone with William, who was clearly trying to sneak away. "Stop right there," called out. "How did you even know about their relationship?" William chuckled, scratching the back of his head. "I've known since high school. It was obvious those two would get tangled up sooner or later, but some pure, clueless white rose kept believing James was a good guy." A surge of frustration welled up in my chest as I clenched my teeth. "You're right. James isn't a good man. None of them are." William nearly tripped over himself, his eyes widening in shock. Scratching his head again, he glanced up cautiously and asked, "What about me? Am I the same?" I studied him, my thoughts drifting to my previous life. After college, I'd heard William had gone abroad. After that, there had been no news of him. Keeping my tone cold, I replied, "Men only turn bad when they get rich. For now, you're still a good person." William let out a dramatic sigh of relief and grinned. "Then I guess I'll stay poor forever." Under the bright daylight, I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, a hand gently held my wrist. It wasn't the forceful grip James used to employ. William's touch was soft, almost cautious, as he encircled my wrist with his fingers. Looking up, I saw that his right hand, which had been holding his phone moments ago, now held a white rose. Dew glistened on its petals, reflecting the warmth and humor in his smiling eyes. I was surprised, and an unexpected shyness crept into my heart. Cross 2 lifetimes, this was the first time anyone had formally given me a rose. The tall, handsome young man extended the flower toward me and said, "Vivian, about my earlier question, would you honor me with the chance to have dinner together?" After what he'd done to stand up for me, I couldn't refuse. "Sure," I said quietly. The restaurant he chose was elegant, clearly a deliberate choice. Even the vase on the table held a single rose, its delicate petals adding to the ambience. Sitting across from William, I couldn't help but feel that he had changed, yet somehow remained the same. Soft jazz played in the background as I glanced toward the entrance. To my surprise, I saw James working as a waiter, bowing deferentially and greeting customers with exaggerated politeness. He looked utterly pathetic. I suddenly remembered that during this time in his life, James had been working part-time to support himself. The restaurant owner wasn't known for being kind. In my previous life, James would come home complaining about his boss. Out of concern, I had written a lengthy letter, attaching homemade cookies, hoping it would earn him better treatment. It had worked. After that, James's job had become much easier. Sometimes, James would laugh as he recounted the story, saying, "Vivian, you're too soft-hearted. Why is this world so unfair?" I thought to myself, some people are born as trust fund kids, while others, like James, are stuck working menial jobs at restaurants just to scrape by. Back in those days, James would put his arm around my shoulder and, with a smug grin, say, "But being with you, Vivian, a rich and beautiful girl, makes it all worth it." I was young and naive then, and his words felt sweet and comforting. Now, they only left me feeling awkward and distant. At the dinner table, William grinned mischievously and asked, "Was that your ex-boyfriend?" I shook my head. "No more like a criminal record." William burst out laughing. His laughter loud enough to catch James's attention. James's gaze locked on us, and his awkward smile froze before his face flushed deep red. He abandoned his task and approached us, his voice low and cautious. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" He glanced warily at William and added, "And you, don't even think about getting any ideas. She's mine." After decades of marriage, I knew James carried an intense sense of ownership over me, as though he believed I was an inseparable part of his life. I chuckled coldly and replied, "James, you're really confident, aren't you? I told you we've broken up. Do you really think I'm going to spend my entire life with you?" The restaurant was crowded, and James, no longer able to make a scene like he used to, lowered his voice. "Vivian," he said, his tone almost condescending. "If not me, then who? Who else would you be with?" A sudden wave of anger surged within me. Smiling, I deliberately hooked my freshly manicured nails into William's sleeve, lightly tracing circles on the back of his hand. William's grin deepened, full of amusement and provocation. James immediately stepped between us, cutting off the interaction. His expression grew tense as he called over the restaurant manager. Bowing and scraping, the manager approached. James, pointing to William's simple, unassuming attire, declared, "This guy's just a broke student from our school. There's no way he can afford a fancy French meal. He's probably here to cause trouble." The manager, attempting to appear authoritative, adjusted his tie and glanced at me. James quickly added, "Don't worry, I know her. She's innocent. He's the one you should be looking into." William, unbothered by the commotion, strolled toward us, his posture relaxed and confident. James's smug smile widened, and he turned to me with a heartfelt gaze. "Vivian, you need to think carefully. Who's the right choice for you? I'm going to work as an executive at a top firm someday. If you come back to me now, we can be just like before. What do you say?" His shamelessness made me laugh. "Even if I end up begging for scraps on the streets, I wouldn't get back together with you," I replied curtly. James's face darkened with frustration. Gritting his teeth, he hissed, "Vivian, don't regret this." By then, the heavyset manager had stepped closer, but the moment he caught sight of William, his expression shifted dramatically. Suddenly, his attitude became even more deferential than it had been toward James. Bowing deeply, he stammered, "Young master, what brings you here?" Both James and I froze in shock. William, dressed in bargain bin clothes, turned out to be the true boss of this high-end restaurant. Unable to hold back his laughter anymore, William's sharp gaze fell on James. "Who was it just now, claiming I couldn't afford a French meal?" he asked, his tone playful yet cutting. The manager, now fully realizing who William was, took a moment to steady himself before bowing even lower. "Young Master William, I had no idea it was you." James's face went through a rapid series of changes: confusion, disbelief, and finally panic. Stammering, he tried to salvage the situation. "William, you joker. This restaurant belongs to the Lee family, not yours. Your last name is Williams, isn't it?" William, calmly slicing his steak, replied with a smirk, "Perhaps I never mentioned this before, but my mother's maiden name is Lee." The blood drained from James's face as the realization hit him. He glanced nervously between the groveling manager and my icy expression before forcing out a weak smile. The man who once shared my life, my so-called husband of many years, now stood there humiliated, bowing and scraping before William. "Young master, I didn't know about your status before. Please, forgive me," James stammered, his voice trembling. William's eyes gleamed with mischief. The manager, eager to please, immediately chimed in. "This is entirely my fault. How could we have hired someone like this? He turned to James, his tone harsh. You don't need to come back to work here anymore. I remember James once telling me how much he valued this job, how dignified it made him feel. He didn't want to lose it. But now, caught between his pride and the reality before him, he hesitated. After a brief moment, he grabbed my hand and tried to pull me away. Vivian, come with me. Let's go. He pleaded desperately. James yanked me hard, and the sound of broken porcelain echoed as the dishes on the table crashed to the ground. A wave of humiliation swept over me, igniting a fury I could no longer contain. I grabbed the vase from the round table and brought it down on his head with all my strength. The sound of the vase shattering reverberated through the restaurant, and the room fell silent. Broken rose petals and water dripped down James's stunned face. He stared at me in disbelief as I stood there, panting, a dark, defiant smile curling at the corner of my lips. You said I needed to know who the right choice was, didn't you? I said coldly, without hesitation. I grabbed William by the chin and kissed him, pressing my lips against his. For a brief, frozen moment, my mind went blank. Then, with William still in my arms, I turned to James and taunted him. William is my choice. He's the one I want to be with. Sorry, William, I whispered under my breath, the weight of regret hitting me as I realized I had just dragged him into this mess. My emotions had gotten the better of me, and I felt terrible for using him to make a point. But to my surprise, William's expression shifted. His usual confidence disappeared, and for a fleeting moment, his face took on a pitiful sadness, like an abandoned puppy. Vivian, you used me and then discarded me. What kind of heartless woman are you? He said, feigning heartbreak. But that was my first kiss. His words brought back the memory of our kiss, and my face immediately flushed red. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. Before I could collect myself, William leaned in, his voice teasing. You know, Vivian, you're going to have to take responsibility for me now. Later that night, the streets were quiet as William and I stood face to face under the streetlights. I didn't say a word, my mind swirling with doubt. A chilly breeze brushed past us, and William's usual smile faded slightly. William, I finally said, my voice trembling. I'm sorry. I don't want to date anyone. His eyes widened slightly, but I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I've been through a failed marriage. I continued. I don't want to take that gamble again. Marriage is just the graveyard of love, and life is nothing but a series of petty struggles. I braced myself for his anger or disappointment, but instead, he stood there silently for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he shrugged and smiled faintly. That's fine. If you don't want to date, we won't date, he said casually. But, Vivian, you can't stop me from liking you, can you? His warm smile returned, and he added softly, I've already waited for you for years. I don't mind waiting a few more. I'm good at waiting. His words struck me deeply. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone wasn't telling me to endure, to settle, or to accept. Instead, he was showing me genuine respect. My heart, long dormant, gave a sudden, powerful thump. Tears welled up in my eyes, and my voice cracked. Thank you, William. Life slowly began to fall into place after that. In my previous life, I had wasted years on love, failed my graduate school exams twice, and eventually resigned myself to being a mediocre housewife. This time, I poured every ounce of energy into my studies, spending nearly 24 hours a day in the library. I hadn't seen James in a while, and the months passed quickly. With my hard work, my grades soared, placing me firmly in the top 5 of my department. Brimming with confidence, I submitted my application for a scholarship. But just as everything seemed to be going smoothly, my advisor called me into his office. Vivian, he said with a frown, someone has anonymously accused you of cheating. I froze in shock as he handed me a letter. The accusations were written in black and white, claiming I had leaked exam answers before the test and questioning my moral character, labeling me as fickle and promiscuous. My hands trembled as I clutched the letter. Decades of familiarity told me the handwriting wasn't James's. Suspicious, I went to the rooftop to confront Sarah. Was it you? I demanded. Sarah didn't even flinch. She crossed her arms and smirked. And if it was? Everything I wrote is true. You leaked exam answers. You abandoned James. And now you're stringing William along. You're a disgrace to women. Vivian. I shook with anger, my entire body trembling. The accusation about leaking answers is baseless. I shouted. William and I hadn't even held hands, let alone engaged in any sort of ambiguous relationship. Yet, Sarah shamelessly took out her phone, began recording, and narrated mockingly. Everyone, take a look. The Queen of Heartbreakers has finally shown her face. This woman dares to apply for a scholarship? What a joke. As the righteous defender of morality, I've already reported her to the academic office. Let's see how she deals with her karma. Her name is Vivian White. It hit me suddenly. While I had been burying myself in books for the past 6 months, Sarah had been relentlessly spreading rumors about a heartbreaker who abandoned her boyfriend and toyed with others. That heartbreaker was me. Once Sarah revealed my name, a wave of internet trolls began to dig into my personal life. They doxed my family's address and bombarded my parents with harassing phone calls. William sent me a photo of my family's front door, splattered with paint and covered in hateful graffiti. Phrases like, "Your family is a disgrace," and "All of you should burn in hell" were scrawled all over it. Vivian, I passed by your house just now. William texted. What's going on? Are you okay? Before I could reply, my father messaged me. Vivian, your mother's in the hospital. She's overwhelmed with stress. We've been getting hundreds of harassing calls for 3 days straight. Looking at Sarah's smug face, I felt a mixture of anger and despair. She laughed hysterically, her voice cutting through the wind. Vivian, your karma has finally caught up to you. The gusts of wind blew her hair around her face as her laughter turned bitter. Her eyes filled with hatred as she hissed. Do you know how much I've hated you since high school? You always had that innocent, pure look that drew every guy's attention. Do you know what James meant to me? I gave him everything. And he still told me that the love of his life was you. He even had the audacity to claim that the two of you had been married in another lifetime. I stared at her, watching as her hatred spiraled into madness. Strangely, I couldn't bring myself to feel anger anymore. Instead, I felt pity. Her jealousy and bitterness had consumed her, twisting the confident and radiant woman she once was into something unrecognizable. Sarah stood at the edge of the rooftop, her voice faltering as tears streaked down her face. Vivian, she said, her tone breaking. Do you know what I envy most about you? I took a step forward, sensing something was wrong. Sarah, I said gently, trying to calm her down. Don't do anything rash. We can work this out. By now, a crowd had gathered below. Among them were James, nervously lurking at the edge, William, who was panting from running to get there, and my parents. My mother, frail in her hospital gown, leaned heavily on my father, her eyes never leaving me. Sarah's mental state seemed to be crumbling. Her smile was fractured, her expression teetering on the edge of despair. Vivian, she whispered, her voice trembling. You're so naive. Do you know what I've always envied most about you? I steadied my breathing, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah, think carefully. Once you're gone, there's nothing left. Nothing can be undone. She gave me a mocking look but didn't respond. Instead, her hand moved slowly to her flat stomach. Shaking her head, she said, I already have nothing, and I don't want to leave anything behind. With those words, she stepped off the edge. Her red silhouette plunged through the air, and a sickening sound echoed in the distance, like the splatter of a watermelon hitting the ground. I froze, my body stiff and unmoving. Her final words echoed in my ears. Vivian, you were right. He wasn't a man worth trusting. Numbly, I descended the stairs, my mind blank. The people who loved me surrounded me, their presence warm and protective. William took it upon himself to release a video clarifying the situation, finally putting an end to the online harassment. James, flustered and pale, approached me awkwardly. Vivian, I'm just glad you're okay. I never thought that crazy woman would go this far. If I'd known, I would have stayed away from her. His words only deepened the hollow feeling inside me. My eyes turned red with rage as I lunged forward and slapped James hard across the face. The sound echoed loudly, leaving James momentarily stunned. He instinctively raised his hand to retaliate. But before he could, William stepped in, his voice dripping with mockery. "Vivian, why are you resorting to violence? Let me help break this up." With a sarcastic smirk, William pinned James's arm down with a grip so firm it left James helpless. In the ensuing chaos, I managed to land several more blows on James, leaving his once handsome face swollen and bruised. He flailed and cried out, "I didn't know she would kill herself. Who could have guessed someone so clever would do something so stupid? I just slept with her a few times, and then she started clinging to me." Fueled by fury, I punched him again, his face now resembling a mess of bruises and swelling. It wasn't until the police stepped in and pulled me away that I managed to calm down. Still sprawled on the ground, James kept making excuses, muttering about how Sarah came from a broken family, and tried to make him take responsibility for her problems. "You can't seriously expect me to commit to some clingy, crazy woman," he spat bitterly. "You're an absolute scumbag, James," I said coldly. Before I could say more, William landed a punch square on James's nose, silencing him instantly. Unlike my hits, William's blow carried undeniable force, leaving James dazed and speechless. As the chaos died down, I followed William, intending to leave the scene. But James's mocking voice rang out behind us. "Vivian, are you really this stupid? Don't you realize the William standing beside you isn't who you think he is? Can't you see he's not the same?" William, usually confident and composed, suddenly froze. His posture stiffened, and his expression grew unnatural. I turned to see James laughing so hard he could barely catch his breath. His words came out between fits of laughter. "William, oh, William, so, you're one of us too? How did it feel watching Vivian and me together in our past life? Did it sting? You waited decades for her, didn't you? And she didn't even know." His words hit me like a thunderclap. I stood motionless, my mind racing. Memories of what William had once said came flooding back. "I've waited for you for so many years. I don't mind waiting longer. I'm good at waiting." Tears welled up in my eyes as I connected the dots. The white rose left at my bedside when I died in my past life, the one that had brought me comfort in my final moments, was the same as the one William had given me in this life. Seeing me cry, James smirked and continued, "Oh, come on, Vivian. Do you really think you and William can make it work? You failed once in marriage. Do you really want to waste your life again?" His smugness made it clear. James had always known I was unhappy in our marriage. He simply didn't care because he benefited from my misery. Standing on his self-righteous pedestal, he sneered, "Vivian, you're heartless. We had children together. For God's sake, children are the product of love and happiness." I looked at him, my voice calm and detached. "If children are only for the sake of reproduction, then I see no reason for them to exist." After 2 lifetimes, I'd grown indifferent to the idea of destiny or ties bound by children. If James and I didn't end up together in this life, it simply proved we weren't meant to be. James opened his mouth to retort, but his face betrayed a hint of unease. It was as if Sarah's death had no effect on him at all. Just then, the police arrived with a forensic specialist. They immediately restrained James and forced him to the ground. "Don't you dare pin this on me," James shouted, his voice high-pitched and panicked. "Sarah's death has nothing to do with me. She killed herself." The forensic specialist spoke coldly. "Mr. Carter, our initial examination revealed that Miss Sarah was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death. A DNA test confirmed that you're the father." James began sweating profusely, but he still tried to argue. "So what if the kid was mine? I didn't kill her." One of the officers pulled out Sarah's shattered phone. Screen flickering, the officer displayed fragments of a conversation on the screen. Sarah had told James about her pregnancy and begged him to take responsibility. His response: "Get lost. You're too clingy. There's no way I'd ever stay with someone like you." The final message on the screen read, "If you really love me, you'll go die for me." The officer's tone turned icy. "Mr. Carter, this evidence suggests that you encouraged Miss Sarah's suicide. You're under arrest. Save your excuses for the courtroom." James's eyes widened in shock, his bruised and swollen face looking utterly ridiculous. Desperation filled his voice as he turned to me, shouting, "Vivian, help me. You know the truth. You know Sarah was the one who wouldn't leave me alone. You were my wife. You can testify for me. I glanced at the comments under William's recently posted video, filled with condemnation for James. A sense of relief washed over me. Feigning innocence, I shrank behind William and said to the officers, "I'm sorry, officers, but I have no idea what Mr. Carter is talking about. I'm not even old enough to legally marry," I said with a teasing smile. "And this man next to me? He's my real boyfriend. Some people should just keep their distance." James's expression twisted in a mix of shock and rage, his face a whirlwind of emotions. He opened his mouth to retort, but William cut him off smoothly, his voice dripping with mock concern. "It seems Mr. Carter isn't in the best mental state. Perhaps he should be sent to a psychiatric hospital. The Way family will cover the costs." James stood frozen for a moment, unable to process the insult. Before the police dragged him away without mercy, he screamed curses at the heavens, at the earth, at everyone. But it was all futile. I turned and grabbed William's hand, a carefree grin on my face. "Come on, let's go. My parents are waiting for us to have dinner." William stood rooted to the spot, staring at me like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. I tugged his hand playfully and teased, "What's wrong? Doesn't my real boyfriend want to take responsibility for me?" Flustered, William shook his head furiously and tightened his grip on my hand. A wave of warmth spread through me, a sense of security I hadn't felt in years. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the quiet path, William and I walked side by side. Our footsteps matched in rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, my heart felt light. "My roommate told me earlier," I said, breaking the silence, "that my scholarship application was approved." William stiffened slightly, his nerves betraying him. I suddenly remembered something and turned to him, narrowing my eyes. "Why did you pretend to be poor when you're clearly rich?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "My parents wanted me to experience life without relying on my family's wealth, so I kept my identity a secret." "And why keep up the act for so long?" I pressed, my curiosity getting the better of me. William looked genuinely wronged as he gazed at me with puppy-like eyes. "Because you said rich men always turn bad. I didn't want you to think I was like that." I couldn't help but laugh, squeezing his hand tightly. "William, this time, I won't make you wait any longer." Epilogue. My name is Ryan Way, the adopted son of William. It was my father who brought me out of the orphanage, saving my life. For all the years we lived abroad, I never once saw him with a woman. He would always smile gently while watching me play, and in his quiet moments, he would carefully tend to a bouquet of white roses. Once, I asked him why he always kept those roses. He merely smiled and said nothing. He would sit in his rocking chair, slowly rocking back and forth, as if waiting for something, or someone. When his time came, he clung to life just long enough to tell me to deliver a bouquet of white roses to someone. Following his wishes, I traveled across the country to place the flowers by the bedside of an elderly woman in a hospital. Then I returned home, exhausted but relieved to have fulfilled his final request. When I told him the task was complete, he smiled weakly and murmured, "Good, good." His voice trailed off as he whispered, "Vivian." On his bedside table was a high school graduation photo, with everyone but one man and one woman scratched out. My heart ached as I knelt by his bed, crying uncontrollably. His passing left me in deep sorrow. I became distracted, unable to focus, and one day I got into a terrible car accident. A truck crushed my car, and I died instantly. But in death, I found myself opening my eyes again, blurry and unfamiliar. I saw a couple standing over me, a man and a woman. It was the day I had been abandoned at the orphanage, but this time, they had come for me. The man seemed vaguely familiar. He smiled warmly at the woman and said, "What do you think? Should we adopt this one?" To my shock, it was my father, his younger self, full of life. I reached out to him, but all that came out was an infant's garbled coos. From their conversation, I learned that the woman, his wife, didn't want to have children of her own. Respecting her wishes, they decided to adopt. That's how they found me. The woman, beautiful and kind, looked exactly like the person in the photo my father kept by his bed. She smiled as she picked me up. What should we name him? She asked. William's younger self thought for a moment, then casually said, let's call him Ryan. Perfect, she agreed with a laugh. As an infant, I could only blow bubbles in protest. Through the car's reflection, I thought I saw William wink at me, my tiny heart filled with confusion, but I soon dismissed it. After all, I was just a baby. And babies? Babies just need to act like babies. My stomach rumbled, and I did the only thing I could. Waoeoe.